Hi guys, welcome to the fourth episode of our Adda with an author. We are so glad that some of you found time to join us for this interview with Archana Sarat for her Sleeping Dogs. Before we start the Adda today, let us briefly introduce Literary Adda to all of you. Obviously, you guys know it's a book club and we read like an author over here. It's a close-knit community of readers and writers who are published and want to get published, love to read books and dig deep into the layers of the writer's thought process and their techniques to understand better how it goes when a writer thinks and creates their worlds. That kind of motivates us and helps us learn to build our own process. Now, coming back to Archana, her books, Literary Adda's book club decided to pick up her mystery novel, Sleeping Dogs, for our March book of the month. Sleeping Dogs is a story about a 21-year-old Arna who lost her mother when 12 years ago. Along with that, she lost all her memories of her childhood as well. But now, when she moves back to Mumbai to live with her estranged father and find a suitable career path, she gets intrigued by her mother's death. She starts investigating, digging where she should not be digging. In a detective mode that Arna is in, her sneaky curiosity, she starts looking into the past. We as reader also get extremely curious and get dragged along with this journey with Arna. What really happened in all those years ago with her mother is kind of intriguing. The thriller and the movements in the book, the thought process of Arna, and the way she keeps finding and linking one events with another, it builds the curiosity for the readers as well. The author of the book and more of her books, that is to say, Birds of Prey, which is a psychological thriller, has also integrated a lot of psychological element in this book, Sleeping Dogs, as well. Birds of Prey has been adopted on screen in Tamil language as well. And that is amazing. Looking forward to watching it someday and understand it as well and we are looking forward to Sleeping Dogs as well because it is written in a very Bollywood thriller kind of manner. I could completely visualize the entire story. So that brings us to ask you, Archana, how did it begin? How did Sleeping Dog begin?
First, hello everybody. Thank you so much for having here. It's such a joy and honor, in fact, being a part of Literary Adda and then being chosen as the, author for this month. And thank you so much for reading my book. And I'm glad, all of you enjoyed it. So coming to the question, your question was how did Sleeping Dogs begin, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of what I write is based on lived experience. The initial part of the book, the entire story where she gets married and she moves from Chennai to Mumbai, her initial experiences, many of those things are like literally what happened to me, you know that train ride and all those incidents actually were exactly what happened to me, exactly how was my first experience when I came to Mumbai. Again, the apartment they buy, they're moving in, their initial experiences and all the society politics and stuff which happens there. Again, that's also a very much a lived experience. But then it stops with that, I think. But the characters, of course, are very different. I am definitely not like her, and yeah, my poor husband is also no not like you can. So there, I think probably it stops over there. But all those little experiences, I think, are things which you are able to write only when you actually live through them. I feel some, at least to some extent, live through them, not necessarily personally, could be through your friends or maybe what you've seen in some relative's life or someone like that. So for me, mostly whatever my idea, the germ of the idea which comes in is, usually through my own lived experiences and the questions which I ask myself: what if this happens? What if that happens? And that's how it starts.
Yeah, sounds interesting. So having said that, what is your first memory of writing? When did you start writing or when did you pick up writing as a passion or something that you would want to pursue as a profession?
So I've actually always written. I think my initial ones, which to my memory, are when I wrote, when I was about some 8 years of age, writing poems, sharing them. And I would write it everywhere, behind my school notebooks and the school diary and all those places. And I remember this incident so well because at around that age, my mother gave me this LIC diary and she told me, don't write everywhere, you will lose it. You should keep it very precious. Whatever you write has to be kept very safely. And she gave it that to me. And from then on, I used to always have something like a journal, something like a book where I write down my jottings and whatever I think, some small stories. And I used to love writing these stories and sharing it in the classroom. So it would go around, the paper would keep passing around the class, people would read, and mostly all the characters' names would be my own classmates' names. So all of them would be very excited to read it because they will be starring in the story. So that's how it started. But I had never seriously thought of it as a career or, that I want to get published or anything like that. I would, of course, keep sending out to my school journal, or if there was any call for some submissions or something like that, I would do it. But I didn't very actively select that I want to write a book or I want to do something with this, because as most of you must be knowing, as Indians and especially a South Indian, writing is never thought of as a career option at all. So I'm not sure how many of you know, but I'm a chartered accountant. So yeah, so it's either doctor or an engineer or a chartered accountant or something are the only options which are open. But then the time when I seriously started pursuing it was after I got married and moved to Mumbai, and very soon I had my first child, and I didn't have any support network over here, and I had to be at home. I cannot sit simply. I have to keep doing different things and keep trying new things, which was when my brother-in-law had got some papers or some, it was a pamphlet, I think, basically of this course which was from UK about writing and getting published. So they were like, okay, this is something interesting. We always write, but I never thought about publishing. What does it mean? How does one go about it? And that's how the entire thing started.
So we see you have written a lot of books on mystery, thriller, and children book as well. So how do you decide what to work on? Like, which theme do you choose? Is there any picking process, or the story comes first to you?
It's usually only the story comes first to me. It's never, especially with a thriller, it's never a thought out process. And usually I don't have an outline as such. Of course, every book becomes a little different, but Birds of Prey, I didn't have an outline at all. There was nothing. So what I was writing that day was what was happening that day. So that's how it went. With Sleeping Dogs, at least I had a little bit of, okay, what is this chapter going to be about before I started the chapter? I know that was the maximum I had. I didn't have a end in mind or a climax in mind. So usually always, like when I reach about some 80% of the book, I'm stuck. I don't know how to get out of it. So that last 20% drags a little bit because I need to find my way around. And then finally, after that 20% is done, there's a lot of rewriting which happens to make everything coherent and to make it work. But that's my process, and I kind of love doing that because I think if I know the story, I'll find it very boring to write it.
Yeah, that's the kick of mystery, I guess. Like, even
Uh,
the author faces the mystery. It's nice to know that you were also at some point in the same space we are.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we were discussing this off the records
Hmm.
before. What different genre do you see yourself trying next, or if you wanted to ever?
So I find myself that, there's a season when I like to read some particular type of books, I feel, some particular genres of books. Then after reading a lot in that particular genre, I find myself writing in that particular genre. This is usually what I feel keeps happening again and again to me. So it was the same with the thriller. And the children's book actually didn't even start out as a children's book. It was just that I was reading a lot of short fiction at that time, and I wanted to write short fiction. Somehow I found like mathematics is always a very favorite subject of mine. And I found this very fascinating to know that we have done a lot about maths in India's contribution to mathematics has been immense. But frankly, most of us don't know the story behind mathematics, in our country. I don't think we are never taught that in school. Especially, I think as children, if you teach them that, they would find it so interesting and exciting that India has done so much in this field, and also how this entire thing came up. So I somehow all that together gave me the idea to write these collection of short stories about the history of mathematics. And it's historical fiction. It's fiction only. It's not a non-fictional piece. And then once I finished it, the publisher felt that, I'm going to call this a children's book. So it wasn't my decision to call it a children's book. And I was like, really, is it a children's book? And he's like, yeah, children's book can be read by an adult, but if I call it an adult's book, the children can't read it. So I'm going to call it a children's book. So I was like, okay, fine.
So you're going to write more on the historical fiction. Can we expect more stories from you on that?
Yeah, maybe, I think. But currently, I'm working on a book which is a non-fiction, but in the history genre.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
That's
so that's again a very different kind of, a very challenging project which I'm doing. And also another thing that I've been recently enjoying is, especially during the COVID, I wanted to read something light. So I was reading a lot of comedy at that time.
right.
So the book which I wrote recently, and I just completed it, and it's in that whole process of pitching and going around. So that's a children's book, and it's comedy. It's that laugh aloud kind of comic. So like I said, I think the genre, I love trying different genres.
Wow. That's so amazing. So any odd experience that you had in your journey to become a writer for both screen or pages, since your book has already been adapted to the screen? Something that surprised you that you did not expect to face in this journey?
Okay. Um, like good or bad or
Whatever you're comfortable to share with us.
okay. Um, so I think it's the lot of information which we have online relating to, I think, publishing, and also relating to converting a book to screen is based on what happens abroad. But the Indian market is something very different, and it works
Mhm.
in a very different manner. And that was something which was a little surprising to me, because all the information whatever we are fed is all the advice which we read about publishing or everything, not everything really works in our market, I think. So that's one thing which I found very uh, surprising in my initial phase. I felt, even with the screenwriting journey also, I felt that was something which was very different. And the second thing which I think was that it's um, the community which you have around yourself actually makes a lot of difference. And I found a very nice and supportive community initial phases. But again, the community around you keeps changing also. So there are people who are interested in writing who kind of fall off after that from that. They lose interest in it, or they change their path. They don't want to do it anymore. Uh, so sometimes it's okay to be open to change also in the community you surround yourself with. And that was something very difficult for me initially, because I had this very nice, beautiful, supportive group. Then suddenly I felt like most of them are gone because they were no longer interested in writing and pursuing that thing. But then it's okay. You find a new set of people who are interested in what you're doing, and then it slowly happens. So there are these, I think, very lonely periods, especially in writing, which you kind of have to navigate through. And yeah, that's, I think, one of the other things which I found it a bit challenging, I would say, more than something surprising. I think that's more a challenging thing, I think, when it comes to writing. Yeah.
You took that and you built a community of your own. I mean, that is inspiring. Literally. I mean, now that we know what you have been through, it's just, I can totally imagine how you might have thought about it, and you turned that into your power and something that you give back.
Yes,
That's just
definitely. Yeah.
amazing. Really
Rewrite
inspiring.
and Inspire has been like now around for a long time now. And I always keep trying to do different things. And just like Literary Adda, we have a book club too. And
Yeah.
it was started during COVID in 2020. And so we are also now about 4 years old.
Oh,
And
nice. And now you are
yes.
okay. Glad to have you. And with that, give the next session to Pratyusha.
Yes.
Uh,
I'm audible, right?
yeah, you are.
Okay. So now we will get into, the more questions of while discussing the book and getting into the story of sleeping dogs now. We see that it's a, who done it kind of a story. We would love to know how, you came upon the structure of the story. Like, did you already know before that this is going to be a detective story? Like, even though it is not exactly a detective story, did you already know that, like, when you got the idea, or it just evolved while you wrote the story?
The two things which I had when I started writing was one was the infantile amnesia. The whole idea of infantile amnesia was kind of very interesting to me. And the second thing was, a child trying to find out more about a mother who's been not been around for a very long time. So these were the only two ideas which I had in my mind. And so it everything just started from there. And that's how it went. Like I said, my first draft is only about exploring and finding the story, what I want to, what is happening actually, because even I don't know what's going to be happening. And after that, even as I'm writing, there's a lot of rewriting which keeps happening. Sometimes I've like done 6 7 chapters, and in the eighth chapter I realize, okay, this is how this thing is particular thing is going to change. So there are many times I need to go back and change the first few chapters also, sometimes completely, or sometimes I just make notes over there that I need to change these things in the chapter. Then I go ahead and proceed. I try not to do too much of that changing thing. Otherwise, I'm just stuck in that 8 chapters only. Otherwise, I never move forward. But I do make notes. I keep going back and keep making notes. Then after the first draft is over, the real challenge, in fact, sometimes comes up over there. And then the second draft and third draft. In fact, Sleeping Dogs, I think I wrote 3 drafts by hand before the book was done, and then I did another 6 or 7 drafts which was on the computer. So it's a very tedious process, but I had just come across the very first draft the other day. I was just like cleaning the cupboard and I came across the very first draft, and I saw that I had not written Arna as a girl. So she was a young boy. And I was so surprised to see that because I didn't even remember that. Over the period of a year, I had completely forgotten that I had initially started off writing this person as a male character. And I don't even know when this kind of changed. Probably in the second or third draft, it changed. And then it completely wiped out that I don't even know. I never even thought of it as a boy after that.
Yeah. I think this happens with during the process of writing. Like you said, obviously the first draft is going to be messy,
Yeah,
and it is the most difficult to come out on page. Like, it takes a lot of time, and we have been facing, like, all the writers we have in Literary Adda are also facing the same
yeah,
sort of issue. And we have noticed this also happening, like the genders of characters, they also change over time, and because obviously nothing's stays the same during the process of the writing.
correct.
So good to know, like, it happens with everyone.
I know.
Yeah. So the book is written in two timelines, right? It's
Correct.
now and then, and one is from Arna's POV, and the other is from her mother's POV. So, like, how challenging, was it for you, like stepping into two different shoes, two different timelines, even because we see that it's not a modern timeline; it's a very different timeline. So, how did you manage it?
Yeah, I absolutely love doing that. So it's done in both my thrillers are like somewhat structurally, I would say a little bit the same. So I love writing two different timelines, and I love writing from the point of view of two different characters. And I don't know, that's I think something that I'm realizing now. So when I still keep every time I start a new book, I again realize that I go back to that same thing. So that's something I love doing and I enjoy doing, I think. And for me, I feel especially with the most important characters, in fact, in Sleeping Dogs, it's Arna and Devika, they are the most important characters who hold the entire story together. So when I write both of them, it kind of makes me understand them both in such detail. And it kind of, also feeds into each other's story. So Devika coming for the first time to Mumbai and her feelings. Also, at the same time, parallelly, it flows with Arna coming to Mumbai for the first time and her thoughts about it. So I love kind of playing with those kind of things a little bit. I think it makes the whole process fun for me too.
But I know that it was very like natural for you and not a challenge.
Yeah.
The next thing that we noticed about the book is that it is heavily driven by dialogues, and as writers, it can be a little difficult to just rely on dialogues, and like we hear a lot of advice, how we should be balancing with dialogues and description. But for your book, I think, the dialogues thing worked really well to increase the pace. And it also brought out the difference in each characters. So was that like a conscious decision on your part as a writer, like to just focus on dialogues and how to move the book with that? Or did you think that descriptions should not be there?
Actually, the thing is that it was definitely not a conscious decision. But I think since I read a lot in the similar kind of a genre as what I write, like I said, it's that phase where I'm reading like a lot of thrillers. And then I end up, getting with this idea. And then I start writing. And then when I write, I'm just writing, writing, writing. So somehow I think that kind of, because I read in that same genre, that writing style, I would say, or I wouldn't even say the writing style. I would say more that those little norms which are there for every genre kind of gets added, I think, to my writing. I don't even know how that happens. It's not a very conscious decision. But many people ask me this, so they tell me that it just cuts quickly and it moves fast, and your writing itself kind of hurries us to through the book. And I was like, okay, I didn't even realize, do I do that? Okay. So and now that I wrote the comedy, the one which I'm writing right now, the comedy which I had written, then I realized that what you're saying actually makes a lot of meaning, because that one has these huge chunks where there are no dialogues. It's just this character going around and doing all these goofy things. So I was like, okay, so here there are different ways in which I naturally get into writing, I guess, but depending on what is the story and what I want the reader to feel. But it's not a very consciously thought out process. The only thing which is a very conscious thing which I need to do in my writing is that my first drafts are very underwritten. So usually if the story, most people write a lot and then they need to spend a lot of time in cutting it down to making it, a chunk of that the publisher would actually accept. In my case, I write less. So usually my book would be like, if it's a 50,000 word novel, then I might be like writing around 45,000 and my story would finish. But the problem there is that there are so many things. I'm a very visual writer, so I think every scene through. I can visualize how Arna looks. I can visualize the house, everything. So there are, because I'm visualizing it, I have lost some details in the story. So someone who's reading it new will be like, okay, this is jumped from A to D, and they don't have that connecting point of B and C. So I usually have to give like the at least a month for the manuscript to breathe, look at it again, and then realize, okay, B and C are missing. And then when I go back and I write it out properly, then somehow that word count also increases towards, like, after I do every draft, I see that the word count has increased a little more and a little more. So that's how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so coming to the details of the book, there's plenty of psychological terms and medical terms that you have mentioned. Also, how infantile dementia, amnesia. You mentioned that was the reason for your starting the book. And we also meet characters who are doctors and clinical researchers and people who are studying medicine. And how much time or effort did you have to spend on doing this research, or how did you go about it?
Um, Yeah, so it took a lot of research, in fact, and I had to read a lot because this one especially was very challenging with all the the medical angles to the story. And I had to, especially with that the blood group, whole blood group thing, so I would itself, I would just get confused at times. So I had this huge chart and all put up with all the medical terms, and especially with that blood group combinations, and I had this table of those blood group combinations and stuff which I put up because I used to get kind of lose track of what I was doing, and I needed certain things which formed the main crux of the story. So towards the last couple of drafts, I think when I was like, I'm getting too confused, then I just made this chart, put it up, wrote it, put it up on the table when I was writing the last couple of drafts. So that kind of helped. But yes, it was very challenging and it took a lot of time. And infantile amnesia was like, I just came across it in some situation. I'm not very sure. I think it was a newspaper article or something like that. And that's how it kind of triggered that, like I said, that was the one term which I had before I started the story. And that kind of triggered the entire story. In fact, the starting point was that. So after reading that article in the newspaper, I think I researched about the particular medical condition and I read through a lot about it. And that's where it kind of started. But I think, the research is a very difficult thing because one thing what happens is you actually enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you end up doing so much of it which might maybe not even be necessary for your story, that you end up not writing. So when research becomes a way to procrastinate, then it becomes a little dangerous. So initially with Birds of Prey, I had this issue. So again, Birds of Prey was a very heavily researched book. And over there also I used to get lost in the research, and there it was a little disturbing also. So it was a different kind of research involved. So sometimes after the research, it would kind of drain me and really upset me. So I used to not be able to proceed writing for some time. So after that, when I worked with sleeping dogs, I thought I should very consciously not do research before I write. So I started, like writing, and the research used to happen very, kind of, I would say not exactly parallelly, because at some points of time I had to do it beforehand to proceed. But I tried to keep a limit on it. Writing had to come first. And so then one more thing which helped me over there was I started leaving these blanks. So if there were things which I couldn't write, so I would always tell myself, I'm going to leave a blank for this. And I would just write over there in the manuscript research, and I'll just put a question mark, or in a different color ink. I used to just write that and leave that particular half page or something blank and proceed writing, so that I don't waste my time and get completely bogged in it.
Yeah, that is actually a very nice advice also. Like when we are writing, to not stop our process, just keep a blank and write research and later on do it. Because I do agree, research is, even though it is difficult, it
Mhm.
is an enjoyable process. We do get lost in it and then we forget about writing the story.
Correct, correct. Yeah,
But yeah, this is nice that at least when you're writing your first draft, just keep your points that yeah, you have research on this. Like yeah.
right.
Okay, so coming to the next thing, your book also dealt with a lot of social issues, such as extramarital affairs, or at least the suspicion is the same. There's patriarchy and nosy neighbors, and there is political, things in the society. And then you have discussed how much it impacts an individual's life, like we see in the book. So, how was this process, integrated into the research and planning? Or these are like very sensitive ideas also, like the entire book. It is quite sensitive, all the topics that has been, included in it. So, what was your process to deal with these?
So there's a lot of, I think, this passive aggressive violence which happens in relationships. So, and usually in our society, only if someone hits you, it's considered as something, which is violent. But thankfully, I feel that is changing a lot. It's probably changing now. I think the attention and the importance of passive aggressiveness is also seen. Um, and that was something which kind of, I think that was something which I wanted to write about, where, a person could be completely sweet and loving and everything, but still that relationship could be toxic and difficult to manage. That was something which I wanted to write about. And the second thing which I used to find, that I used to see this a lot happening around me was whether it was in college, as a student, or maybe in a public transportation, or even as a woman when I visit a store or something. I notice a lot of incidents where women are abused. Someone bangs into you, someone touches you inappropriately, or these kind of things which happen. And as a woman, you're disgusted by it, you're angry about it and everything, but you never go and tell your parents. Most of the time, you never end up telling your husband or your parents. Especially with parents, I used to see this a lot in my college years, because as soon as you tell your parent, they're going to say, okay, don't go there. Or what were you wearing? Or what did you do? Why did you look at them? Where were you standing? Where were you on the bus? Did you stand here? Did you do this? Why did you get on a crowded bus? Or all, so somewhere or the other, you're made to feel the blame for it. Maybe they are saying that because they are protective of you. However, as a woman, what happens is that you feel like, okay, this is an incident I'm not going to talk about, because I am only going to be blamed for it. The initial first or second time, once you say that, you realize, okay, I'm going to be blamed for it, and then you shut up. And sometimes keeping quiet and not sharing it could be really dangerous for you, which is exactly what happens in the story. you know so if he had been very understanding about her intentions, or her, what she was going through, maybe she would have been more open to him. So when that that communication channel breaks down, it's easy for others to come into in our relationship. So
It is very challenging to write about these things as well.
correct, right.
Um, So now coming to the characters, I would say like all these characters are quite gray. Like nobody is completely good or bad, and we love seeing characters in such different views. What was your process with with building characters? Did they come naturally, or did you have all these character profiles with their professions, everything chalked out while writing?
Uh, so for me, I feel that that doesn't work for me, having these entire profiles drawn up of a character. So I see those character charts and all which are there, sometimes shared online. What's the color of the hair, color of the eyes, and all that is there. For some people, it actually works. And in fact, even especially if you're writing a series, or you're writing a character who's going to go through a lot of books, and then maybe it makes a lot of sense to do that also, so that you have some continuity over there. But for me, usually what I do is I just start and I start writing. And in especially with a thriller, any description of that person comes in only when it is necessary for the story. If the color of the eye is not relevant to the story, you will never come to know what is the color of the eye of that particular person. So if I don't feel it's necessary, or it's not adding anything to move my story, I'm not going to speak about it. But if there's something, I think I speak about Devika having long hair, Arna's mother having long hair, and she liking it and growing her hair and those kind of things. So it was necessary for the story, so that's why it's there. But otherwise, if it's not needed, I wouldn't have bothered to write about it. I like those touches, of description of the person and stuff, but I don't try to dwell on it. And so what happens is, suppose if it's places where there is, things where I've written like this, where I've suppose mentioned in the story that this person has a long hair, in case I've done that, then when I'm doing my second draft, or maybe even the third draft for that matter, at that time, then sometimes I make a note of it somewhere. So this person, as I'm writing about this person, I just make a note. Okay, I've mentioned that this person has long hair. I've mentioned that this person likes this color. So, and then I try to make sure that I've not deviated from that anywhere else in the story. Because I'm quite a slow writer and I write over a period of time. And, I shouldn't really miss out on some detail which I'm doing. So then I do that in the next few drafts. But characters, I think, develop quite organically for me. And I love, them developing more and finding out more about them as the story progresses, instead of building them up completely and then trying to do it. Yeah. And all of us have gray, in us. It's not, all of us are the same. So I try not to keep anyone as very, black or white. So I feel even a antagonist has their own reasons and why they are what they are. So instead of painting someone as a completely black or a white character, I try to keep them somewhere in between.
Yeah, even that seems realistic.
Yeah,
Yes. When we see the characters, if they're completely black and white, they don't seem realistic.
true.
Okay, so the next question we have for you is like, which part of this mystery, the entire novel was most fun and exciting for you?
Okay. You mean in the writing process? Or
Yes, yeah.
so writing process for me, the first draft is the most fun which I have. I really enjoy it. And the subsequent drafts are probably like maybe half the enjoyment of the first draft. Everything after that is a drag. So I don't like the editing process. I don't like to, proofread and all those things. Everything else is a huge drag. And marketing is also finds very funny and embarrassing at times. But
I
yeah,
get it.
I know. But everything else I find it very difficult. But the first draft and writing by hand, the first draft and that whole process is a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it, and discovering the story and writing out on something new. And
Yeah.
I love sharing it, whichever ones which are probably appropriate for them, then I love sharing it with my kids, in fact. So whatever I've written out, if it's actually, now they've quite grown up, but earlier I used to see if it's appropriate for them, then I love reading it out loud to them and, seeing their reactions, what they like. And so it's
The
kind of,
first alpha readers
yeah,
of your book.
right.
Okay. Actually, like, going through the first draft, it is bound to be fun. There's a thrill, to finding what the story is,
Right.
along with the characters. Even the writer is, trying to find a story.
I know.
Yeah. So, is there anything, else you would like to share about this entire writing process of Sleeping Dogs that we have not asked you yet, or anybody else has not asked you?
Um, Something about the writing process of Sleeping Dogs, is it? Um,
Anything from your writing life?
okay. So, like I said, there's one more small step which I do between my first draft and my second draft. Like I said, my first draft is about discovering the story. But in my second draft, before I start writing it, I break down the first draft and do a complete plot structure of it. Okay, so I have my flashcards which are put up, and I try to see whether it's following, because there is a logic behind writing a mystery or a thriller. All said and done, though however we do it, and whatever we want to do, and however we take it, every genre has a structure to it, a kind of expectation which is there, you know and I read a lot of books on writing, on on plot structures and how other writers do it, and what is their process. I really love knowing about it, and I enjoy reading about it. So once my first draft is done, I do go back. And as I'm reading through the entire manuscript, I do put out these flashcards, and I make a detailed, breakup of how I want to take the story, and how the flow of the book is going to be. And so I think that is one process which probably, is not much highlighted by me. Maybe probably I miss talking about that. And since you are a group of writers, I think it's very important for you to know that just because I don't have an outline when I start doesn't mean you don't need an outline to write. I think it definitely, that after that outlining process, when I write the second draft, it becomes much stronger than what it was as a first draft. So first draft is probably a writer's draft, what you do to enjoy yourself. But when I'm reworking it and writing it for an audience, that's where it becomes legible for the person who's reading it. And that's very important, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Yeah, we've seen like there is always this debate going on if someone is an outliner or someone is just writing, with the flow of it. But I also believe, and I've seen this happening with my writing also. Like there needs to be a balance between the both sides. You have to outline a little bit. You have to also let go and flow with the
yeah,
process of it as well.
yeah. And sometimes, there is, like, especially with writing books, which I feel sometimes these little known books, I suddenly pick up and I start reading them. And they give me a very good idea on how I can structure something, and how I can do. Like, for example, with the Birds of Prey, there's this book called Writing from the Middle. Okay, it's not a very famous book also. I think it's James Scott Bell's book. Got a lot of books on writing, but this one is not really very popular also, in fact. So it's just something which I had bought on Kindle, and I just started reading. And I felt that certain things, aspects which are mentioned in that book would suit for me very well at that stage of writing. So I used those aspects of how he had mentioned on outlining and plotting out it. But all this is again after the first draft. So till my first draft is done, I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just writing whatever I feel like writing, going all over the place, and finding out my story, so that at least it's completed. I feel that if I do this whole process and then start writing, maybe I may not be interested in writing. There are writers who break down everything. They know every scene of the book before they start writing, which is wonderful, because they must be saving a lot of time and not writing like me, writing all over and keep doing it. But then somehow I feel the whole thing of writing had always been something that I started doing for fun. So I shouldn't lose that fun part of it somewhere. If I lose that, maybe I will not do it more. So even though it is more laborious and it takes more time, I'm like, okay. So even some way, anyone who says I write without an outline and I write just like that is, of course, rewriting with an outline. That's what I would call it. Yeah,
Well, I guess we'll move to the next section and Joey will
sure.
lead you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Like all the questions that you answered, it just made me realize, oh my gosh, she will understand how I feel like about. There is a word for this, panster.
Yeah,
People who think as they go, and somehow it is also the idea that they don't need to plan things out, which I usually don't. And like you said, that you write things down,
that I have mentioned. She has long hair and stuff.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting because I usually my first draft is sting, so I keep forgetting, and now I think I have to do that with the small details. Like I've
Right.
made this, so these are very helpful, and yeah, it feels very relatable that you write something on the go and then you come back and you outline it
Yeah.
and proceed.
Yeah. I'm so glad it you could all relate to it.
Yeah, we should do another session on this, how you write, knowing more about your writing process.
I'd
It
love
was
to.
so fun. Yeah. So our next session is more about publishing process and your upcoming work and your life as a writer right now. Uh, let's talk a bit about your publishing journey so far. So how did you actively look for a publisher? Because you mentioned earlier that there was a moment in time when you decided, so this is something that you would like to look forward to. So how did you prepare for that? How did you get the draft ready? How did you went out calling for it? How did you query? So what was that process for you like?
So, just to give a little bit of background, so what I initially, when I started, when I wanted to get published, I thought I wanted to write a fiction. I wanted to write a novel. But what I realized is, if you don't have any publishing credits at all, then you are not taken very seriously in the industry. You know, and it's very difficult to get published, especially if you want to publish your short stories, any fictional piece, which if you want to get it published in a magazine, the acceptance is very low. Usually they don't, so what I realized was publishing non-fiction is little more easier when it comes to, newspaper
Mhm.
articles or magazine, articles or something like that, is a
Mhm.
little bit more easier than when compared to getting fiction published, even if it's a poetry or a short story. So what I did was I again went back to my CA and I started writing some finance related articles. So I initially, when I started out and thought, okay, I'm going to get myself published. So this was my step one. So I started writing finance related articles, and I got published in Economic Times. I've been published in Times of India, in my chartered accountancy journal, corporate laws journal, and a lot of other things. I had like written some pieces over there and got those ones published initially. So now when I could send out a short story or something, I could say that I've been published in and mention at least a few things where I've been published in. And that I felt made a little bit of difference because people are like taking you a little more seriously as a writer. And along with sending out those pieces, I was also sending out anything and everything, any little things also. Like if it was, if they wanted a very short story or something, a short piece, I would send out. So I was published in that Chicken Soup for the Soul series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've been published 4 times in that. So there I was like about 4 times I got published there. Then I sent some poetry here and there, and I was published a few of my poems. Again, poems were a little easier to get published when compared to
Mhm.
publishing a short story. Then I always used to love writing flash fiction. So that was also published. You have heard of this newspaper called DNA? It used to
Yes.
come some time back. Yeah, I think
Yes.
no longer.
I applied for it for a job as well at one point.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
They had this magazine called Me, which used to be
Okay.
every Sunday. It used to be
Yeah. Yeah.
a supplement. And Me used to have this columns, little columns for your own, like book reviews. You could send your book reviews there
Mm-hmm.
and flash fiction there and all that. So there again, I got published a couple of times in that. Yeah. And all those things kind of added to it. And also, I applied for certain freelance jobs with the magazines, which were again not at all related to what I wanted to do. So, but I was just doing a few of them so that I have some credits. So there was this, I think, Inside Outside or something like that. There was one inside some architectural magazine which
Mm-hmm.
had it was a freelance job where they had specific thing which I had to do. Like I had to go to a particular company, get an interview done, write up about it and send it. So it was like a paid job. It is
Hmm.
fun to do also and something different, but it had nothing to do with fiction as such. But I was just doing it so that I had some kind of credibility which I could build, that I had some publishing credits, basically. I've done these work. And then after a point of time, I had again, anything you do, you can just keep getting sucked into it and keep doing it for years. you know so there was a point then after a couple of years when I'm like, okay, stop now, no more of this, let's come back to fiction. And meanwhile I was writing this book, and I had like already written two, three, which were like all in their various first drafts and never finished completely. And then I was working on Birds of Prey. So that Birds of Prey, I think, probably was like the fourth complete manuscript that I had started working on, I think. And that's when a very good friend of mine who was just had just got his first book published at that time. And a group of us met up, and then we were just talking. And then I asked him, you know, I'm just working on a book, and what do you think? This is so nice that you got published. What should I do next? So he asked me, did you finish the book? I was like, no. He said, finish it. That is the first thing you should do. More than anything, just finish it first. That's the most important thing that you should do. And that's when I took it up quite seriously, and I started working on the next drafts, doing the outlining and everything else which came with my first novel. And at that point of time, once again, the thing is that because I write myself into corners and all these things, my book usually is like 90-95% it would get finished. And that last 5-10% would be always hanging in the air, wondering, how am I exactly, what should I do to conclude this? What should I do? What should I do? And it keeps going on and on and on. And always there's something like a fire which is put, because of which I have to completely finish it within, like, I have to do it within the next few days. And that's exactly what happened with Birds of Prey. I had an opportunity to pitch with publishers in the Bangalore Literature Festival. And I'd gone there and I pitched. And many of them liked the manuscript, and they gave the email IDs and they asked me to send them a book proposal. So I worked on a book proposal. I sent it off. And that's when a lot of people told me that once you send out your book proposal, anytime they can turn around and tell you, send your manuscript. And you must be able to send your book.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, my book is not done. What do I do? The last 5% is still remaining. So that was the fire at that time. And within that next 4 or 5 days, I just completed it. So I've wrapped it up and I finished the book so that, in case someone asks, I have it. But nobody asked. No, nobody came back and asked for it. But now I have a finished book. So now it's ready, and I have a book proposal which I've prepared also. So it was time to start sending it out. So I started sending it out to all these agents, publishers, whatever I could find online. And so that whole process started, and it kept going on. There were rejections which came in, and I kept trying. And then I got the contract for the book. So
Happy ending.
yeah, happy ending. So it happened in the very usual manner of how, all writers go through, I think, with sending it out and all this, just searching online, finding the websites of these various publishers, making an
Hmm.
Excel sheet, having those email IDs, sending them out, waiting for response. And so it's the same whole process. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm a little bit surprised that you went to the fest and you approached the publishers, because that is something that used to happen before. I do not hear a lot of author taking this stance to publish their book. So I am now curious to know, how was your experience in that particular situation?
So I think I'm not sure if they still have it, but only Bangalore Literature Festival has that particular, event where they
Mhm.
call authors, unpublished authors, to come and pitch their book to publishers. So they
Okay.
have some 7-8 publishers who are lined up over there, who are seated over there. So you just go up on stage and pitch your book. They give you some
Oh,
time,
wow.
yeah, 2-3 minutes to pitch your book, and then there's another 2-3 minutes where you can ask questions, and they ask you questions and you
Mhm.
answer them. And mostly all of them share their email ID. Some of them might specifically tell you, okay, I liked your thing, send it across and all that. But as far as I know, the very first time they had that, they had a book published through
Okay.
that. But after that, I've not heard of any book which was published through that, like I don't think anyone who pitched along with me over there at that point of time
Okay.
had a book published. You had to send your your I think something like your idea of your manuscript was a one pager or something which we had to send to the people who were organizing the festival, and they had a choice. They used to choose, I think, 20 or 30 among the applications that they get, and then they call you for it. So I had just sent it across, and I never expected that it's going to happen, and then suddenly it came across that, yeah, okay, you've been chosen. So it was a good experience.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So what would you like to tell us, the aspiring authors who want to get their books published? Any advice, word of advice, especially for the budding thriller writers?
Okay. So I think the main important advice, which I'm very sure you must have heard a lot, is to read a lot and write a lot, I guess. Yeah. And so reading, I think, is very, very important. And and when it comes to, uh, I would say, fiction, it's also live a lot, I think. Somehow we are very, mostly writers like to be in our own room and in our own surroundings and just, um, you know, and of course, even nowadays, I think even if you do go out also, I just, wherever I go out, I see people on their phone only. So if you're traveling in an auto, you are on a phone. The auto driver is also on his phone, which is very scary. So he's also on his phone, and I see the passenger also on the phone. There's hardly people who look out of the window, and just peep out of the car and just see the, passing scenery. Or so we don't give ourselves any time to notice things around us, notice people around us, I think. And somehow, that kind of makes it very difficult because a lot of fiction comes, I think, from lived experience, from what you've gone through, what you've been like and how you feel. So if you don't notice at all, it's very difficult to write.
Mhm.
you know. So my publisher used to call it as filling the well. So he used to say, like, all that you do, all the different things you do, all the travel that you do, all the books that you read, and everything, you're just filling the well. And when you write a book, probably you're emptying the well. So, so you keep on constantly keep filling that well so that, you can keep writing.
Yeah.
And that also, that's a thing you should do. And another thing is that when I mention about reading a lot, I think it should not be just fiction. It's not only fiction. It's also things like reading a newspaper. A newspaper can be like a treasure trove of stories, you know things which are happening around you. Just watching, like,
Yeah,
all the things which is happening in US itself can give us like a lot of story ideas what's going to happen next. It's like living through some dystopia, I think, probably for those people.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think all just going through things, lived experiences, meeting new people, and
Mhm.
seeing how others live their lives, and having an open ear, talking to people also, especially people from very different walks of life, like your maid probably, who comes and does work, just spending a half an hour with her over tea or something and talking to her, getting to know her life, how she lives, what's happening in her world. Those kind of little things, in fact, I think add a lot to your story well, I would say, that filling the well probably. So yeah, so that's my advice to anybody who wants to write.
Thank you so much for this advice. It was very detailed and very it is something that you would like to listen from someone who teaches. So that we are getting this from an interview, it makes me feel so glad. Um, any technicalities that you would say that a thriller writer should be following, or it would have helped you in the very beginning when you started writing thrillers, or people who write thrillers, they don't know about it. Any sort of information that you might know want to share?
Mm. Um, I think with the language, especially in a thriller, you know, I didn't think of it so much when I was writing, but I'm able to, you know, talk about it now. Is sentence, the length of a sentence and the variety in the sentence length makes a lot of difference, I think, with thrillers.
Wow.
So having these shorter sentences and here and there a longer sentence kind of
Mhm.
gives a push to the story. It moves your story around.
Mhm.
Uh, in a literary fiction, what I these are things which I'm talking about now after writing the book. I didn't really consciously think about it before. So fair warning. But I realize now that I more and more I write, I realize that these longer sentences and a more detail-oriented writing is something which is there in literary fiction or even in comedy for that matter. Comedy also has this way of having these long convoluted sentences which kind of end up in a bang and make you laugh. But with thriller I realized that the sentences are necessarily short, but then you can't have it all as short sentences. Again, that's not going to work. So having here and there a longer sentence kind of pushes your story forward. And I think as writers, whenever we speak about description, we kind of always talk about describing beautiful things like nature, trees, breeze, and maybe a plate of food or something like that. And what I realized is it's actually adds a lot of value if you know how to describe disgusting things also. This is something which I realized in with Elif Shafak's recent book, There Are Rivers in the Sky. Uh, I thought it was such a beautiful read, and the way she describes sewers and slum areas and all these, it's really disgusting places, unclean places and stuff, but it's so beautifully described, beautifully described in the sense, I mean to say, it's so more detailed description and such a vivid description that it'll make you like uh it gives that feeling to you when you read it. And that's also something I think very challenging and a very beautiful thing to do, and I think that's something which might help a thriller writer a lot.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like you said that you did not do it consciously, but while reading Sleeping Dogs, I
Yeah.
could see that fast pace, especially when Arna was having a chat with a friend.
Mm.
The way the details are coming out, I was like, tell me more, what is going on? And then they go on to another thing, and then they come back and give us some details. So it was feeding into what next, what's next? Let's flip the pages, talk more. Oh my God, why are you leaving now? This was happening inside my head. So that is where I got the taste of, oh my God, I'm reading a thriller.
Mm.
Because usually that kind of movement in the thought process would not happen with other stories.
True.
So I personally thought it was a very well thought out, planned way of dialoguing, creating dialogues. But you did that like out of your own sense. That is amazing. And especially how you have put more detailed description in the past
Mm.
when the Devika scene are happening, it
Yeah.
adds value to it because those are storytelling happening. And Anna is actually living a fast-paced life where these things, events are happening.
Yeah.
So now it makes so much sense that thriller needs this kind of variety. Thank you
The
so much.
descriptions, especially with Bombay, like
Yeah.
there's the description of when she goes to see the house that her husband wants to buy, and it passes through this crowded chawl-like area before it goes
Yeah.
to a thing. So that is the accurate description of my house in that area, the Kandivali area. So the area which I mentioned and everything, it's actually there. So a lot of people like who know the place or at least who are familiar with Mumbai. Mumbai has a lot of such localities where
Mhm.
your chawls and your all these posh areas are also just close by next to each other.
Mhm.
You know, and so I think those are things again, like I said, it's lived experience kind of, I think, plays a lot of value in
It
writing.
adds such rich flavor to the story. I mean, we could feel the mentality of Devika when she was going from this place, her society, to this stall when she was working for the NGO, and how it was affecting her. And how she was affecting her mind. I was so intrigued by it. That is so detailed. I mean, very rare for a thriller, I would say. But it was also very necessary to understand what was going on inside her head, to know how it end up, how the things end up being how they were, without giving out any spoilers. So yeah, you already told us what you are working on. My question would be like, how soon are we going to get to read more from you, more of Archana Sarat?
So I had actually not worked on at least I would say not very actively worked on things for the last like about like last 6 months I've been working, but before that for nearly a year I couldn't do much because I was in that whole process of shifting from Singapore to India back again. And during the COVID also there were some phases when I hadn't worked properly, I would say. So now it's when it's again picked up speed. So now I'm still waiting on, approvals and stuff to happen and things to move. This waiting is a very difficult
Yeah.
part of
So
what
the
I'm
the
doing.
story is
Hopefully,
written. So there is
yeah,
more
the
to
story
come.
is
Yeah, we are glad.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So now you know that literary Adda, we try to read from the author's point of view and try to understand how their mind was working when they were creating characters and the plot lines. What could you tell us to focus on while we are reading like that? Any points for aspiring authors like us? And is, keeping that we are a thriller and a mystery specialist, I would say, what should we be noticing to learn more from these kind of books? Because these are
Correct.
enjoyable. Like we take up thriller for light read. But while reading your book, I particularly picked up how dialogues were used, and you said that so well. What is there more we should be learning from it? Any advice?
So I'm not I don't want to specifically talk about my book, but generally I think when we read any book for that matter as writers, somehow we tend to, once we start writing, we tend to start looking at technicalities and how things work in the story. But preferably we should try, I think, not to do that when we are just reading the book the first time. Hopefully we just go through a book as it is and just be, just a reader when we read it for the first time. But it definitely helps a lot to once again go through and have a look at what we really enjoyed.
Mhm.
So, like I was just telling you, Elif Shafak's book, when I first read it, I was like, I absolutely loved it to bits. And I could see that when I initially started reading for the first 30, 40 pages, it moved very slow. And in fact, I had also given it to my mother, and my mother couldn't read it. And I told her, please just wait for 30, 40 pages and then you will love it. So I had to push her to finish that 30, 40 pages and then it moved. Then she kind of enjoyed reading it. So then when I was actually after finishing the book, I was just looking back and I realized that there's a lot of stuff which is written in the 30, 40 pages initially, which she could get away with because it is Elif Shifa. Probably if you
Okay.
or me do it, we might not be able to get a publishing contract for going
Okay.
all way round and round and do our own kind of building up a world and all that. We are expected to be more quicker about it. You can't really drag it out. It's beautifully done, but it's slow and it drags. And when you have no characters, when you don't know whom you're rooting for, and suddenly it's just going, your story is going all over the place, and you know it goes to the sky, it goes to the earth, and it goes everywhere around, and you're lost basically. So that's how she starts it off. So then I realized as like, okay, so these are the things which doesn't work, which is why I found it a drag in initial that few pages. And then I realized what are the things I loved. So then I was going through and reading those descriptions again, especially of how she describes sewers, dirty water, and all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is like done so well. And the way she builds up the sentence, the scene, and all, and the characters also. You meet some really not as apart from the main characters, you meet some very, very interesting, vibrant characters whom you really love, and you can actually visualize them itself in your mind. So that kind of writing. So I think it's good to do all this in the second round of reading rather than doing it in the first round. But sometimes when you read it in the first time, you will realize there are things which you didn't like also in a book. So it might be good to even go back and see what were those things which I didn't like and why did I not like it, what I should avoid doing probably. And also it's good to have a look at characters. And I also, especially with thrillers, I like to see how they build up the plot when I go the second time and I have a look. If the and I do that second reading only if I really enjoyed the book in the first time also. So if I didn't like something at all, then I just don't bother it. But when I read the second time, I try and see, how did they build up, especially when a thriller, how are they building up that suspense and where are they actually revealing it? What gives that kind of satisfaction of wrapping up the story? Do I feel satisfied in fact, So that's something I used to always feel about Harlan Coben's books. The build up is so good. The suspense is really intriguing. And then somehow the climax kind of falls a little flat. That, I feel that same kind of how much was built up and how much he kept us, he didn't satisfy us completely with the ending. So that's another thing. So those are, I think, some interesting aspects to look at when you're, reading. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, that was very obvious, like very precise on what to do. Like pick up what you like and see what doesn't work for you. And
Yeah.
that probably would make us our process as writers when we're reading as a writer. Something we would take in our mind and we will follow.
Mhm.
So now we have a small fun round to end our session with, and I will hand this round over to Pratyusha. Free?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question for you, Archana, would be, a book that you would highly recommend to everyone.
So this is something which I've mentioned always, anywhere and everywhere. So I love the book A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. And absolutely love everything that Rohinton Mistry has written. But this book especially, I think it brings out the flavor of India and the characters, the storyline and everything is amazing. It's one of my favorite books. Yeah.
Okay. So, who are the authors who inspire you or your writing?
So I with Indian authors, I love, like I said, I like Rohinton Mistry. I've read all the books of Neil Mukherjee, and I love Manu Joseph. I love his books. His writing style, he's fantastic, and um, I also enjoy Agatha Christie a lot. I like that way of those cozy mystery stories which she builds up, that world and those characters and everything. So that's something which I've always enjoyed reading. I read a lot of PG Wodehouse, and I like Richmond Crompton, PG Wodehouse when it comes to comedy. And I have thrillers. I keep trying everyone. In fact, I read thrillers like across books. So many new ones now. Nowadays, there's a lot of Japanese thrillers and mysteries which have come up. So I love reading that. I also read Harlan Coben. Recently, I read The Family Upstairs by, I think it's Lisa Jewell. So that was a very different kind of books. That was interesting to read. So I just pick up thrillers, and when it comes to mysteries and thrillers, I like to keep exploring different things. But if something doesn't, especially with mystery thriller, if they cannot keep my attention, because there are a lot of bad books also out there, if it doesn't keep my attention after a few pages, then I just give it up. I don't try to plow through it. I just leave it. Yeah.
There's so many books, little time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And for this session, the last question: who is your favorite fictional detective?
Okay. Miss Marple always. So she's like an always a huge favorite of anything which has Miss Marple in it. Yeah.
Okay, so we enjoyed this entire question and answer session so much,
Thank you.
and I think we will open the audience questions. Anybody from the audience have any questions, please You can unmute yourself or you can put the question in the chat box.
Hi,
Use the
ma'am.
chat.
So you mentioned that you read books on writing while you were doing this process.
Yeah.
Would you please share a couple of names? Because I'm always struggling to find something reliable, and the ones that I have up, they haven't really worked for me. So I was just wondering if you would have any recommendations.
Okay. Um, so there are like I'm always picking up books on writing, and I enjoy, but there are some books I think which are classics and which really stand out, and I'll just mention a few. And also each of these books I feel deal with a very different aspect of writing. So if you're a very you're a beginning writer, and you're struggling to actually write, you're struggling for ideas and you're struggling to find a discipline of writing every day or something like that. There's this book called Becoming a Writer by Dorothea Brande. Maybe I'll put it in the chat if you want. um, so that's a fantastic read, actually. It's a very old book, and she gives some really good practical ideas on how you can get into that whole discipline of writing. And there's this other book called Story by Robert McKee. This is a very, I would say, a very broad book on various aspects of, what goes into making a story. And Robert McKee is actually a Hollywood screenwriter. He's a very famous Hollywood screenwriter. He does these writing workshops in New York for the last many decades, in fact. So he's very popular in that, which like halls of 200, 300 people attend his writing workshops at a time. So and his book is probably, it has a little bit about character, about plotting, about various aspects of a story, though it has a little bit of a screenwriting angle to it. But then whatever he says actually works for a book too, in the same way. And James Scott Bell has a lot of books on writing, which is about like different aspects like plotting and character development and stuff like that. If there's some specific thing which you're having a challenge with, then probably that could be a good book to go through. I also remember a very long time back, I read this book called The Power of POV. I'm not even sure who's the author now, for a very long time back, and I kind of loved that book also. It was written so clearly. This was like when I was just new to writing, and I think that was something which I really liked. And um, I think there's this book called Save the Cat. I think that's Save the Cat. And that's a book about plotting, in fact. So I know it sounds very funny, but they have these little bit of tidbits in that book. Like, this reason why the book is called Save the Cat is because the author of the book says that if you want to establish your protagonist as the person who is the protagonist, and so within the first couple of scenes, you show him saving something. So he climbs a tree and saves the cat, maybe. So you are like, okay, this is the hero. He's going to save the day. So to establish that, you do something like this. And so this is just one of the funny things in it. But otherwise, there are a lot of good aspects to the book also, where he talks about the various beats of a story and all. Again, once again, Save the Cat is a very screenwriting book. But I think it's also, there is a novel version of it also, which came up later on, which was written by another author. But I've read the screenwriting version, which is also, in my opinion, all what we talk about for the screen, in fact, works for a fictional book also. So that's another one which I liked. And like I said, sometimes some books don't work for us at a point of time, that it might help with something, it may not work with another thing. Like Writing from the Middle, I think, was one book which I kind of loved reading, and I took away a lot from it when I was working on my first novel, after which I never read it again. and I felt it had no relevance with the third book which I wrote. With Sleeping Dogs, I didn't find it had any relevance or it had anything to add to it or in any way. So I think again it depends a lot on what kind of story you're writing and what really helps you at that point of time. So despite whatever I mentioned right now, I think take everything with a pinch of salt, all these book recommendations. Maybe what I like may not be something which you like. And for me, it's more fun to, I love reading. You must have heard of Paris Review, right? So Paris Review has this. It's basically a magazine, and every other, I think they have this series called The Art of Fiction, where they speak to an author, um, and they get this in-depth interview which is done of authors and shared in their magazine. It's all the copies are available online also, but I think it's a paid subscription. Here and there, some of them are put out for free also at times. They share a couple of things. So the Art of Fiction series is fantastic. You have all the top big authors over there. You're like Stephen King and all your, Salman Rushdie. You will have a lot of them. And they talk about their writing process and how they go about things. And I find that very inspiring to see their everyday life, how they live their lives, and how do they also suffer from writing blogs and writing challenges and everything. So that's, I think, yeah, those are probably some of my recommendations.
Thank
I
you so
hope I have
much.
not taken a long time and give you a very long-winded answer.
You
No,
know,
no,
Thank
one
I
you
of
for all
more,
appreciate
the.
it.
yeah, we have a big list of, books on writing now to go
Yeah,
back to.
I'm looking forward to reading them. Like I'll pick up a couple. I've heard a lot about the Save the Cat, that book.
Okay. Yeah.
It's something that I think another a friend of mine had recommended at some point. So
Mm.
maybe that's the one I'll pick up next, given that now I have two people telling me that's a good book.
Yes, definitely you should.
I have that book actually, Save the Cat, the novel version, and
Mm.
it also helps. Like there are certain books or movies which has been broken down as per the beats which she talks about. Like
Mm.
there is Harry Potter, definitely. There is I'm forgetting this Ready Player One. There is a movie, right? I think there is a book also. So all of these have been broken down as per the beats.
I'm sorry, I missed mentioning a very important one, I feel, which is the the Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a
right.
very, yeah, it's a tough read. In fact, it's not a very easy, fun read. It's a tough, challenging read because he talks a lot about mythology and takes it very slowly and thing. But even understanding reading a little bit through it is very interesting, and also it's very interesting to, even if you can, I think nowadays there's a lot of online videos on that, on the hero's journey and how it goes about. And if you prefer watching videos, another thing I would recommend is Brandon Sanderson has these classes which he takes in college, and he records them all and just puts it up on YouTube. It's really a treasure trove of information. It's like sitting and listening to him. So he's also, yeah, he's very inspiring.
And very
Yeah,
comforting as
especially
well.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
it's like somebody validating you. It's okay, bacha, you're gonna get there, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Right.
He also loves world building as much as we all
Yeah.
do.
Right, right. And I think that's very important with the fantasy, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any more questions? We have a message from. Okay, thank you, Archana, for such a wonderful and informative session. Your writing process is quite interesting. Could you describe some of the challenges you face and tips to overcome those in turning your first draft into the more coherent second draft? And does it ever happen that after finishing your first draft, you might decide to drop it altogether?
Mhm. Yeah. So, so some, like I said, some of my challenges specifically when it comes to writing my first draft and then trying to make it into a coherent second draft. The first thing is I do a lot of jumping around, like I said, because the story is there in my head, but when I convey it in my page, I have not given that clarity to the reader. So sometimes the character has gone from doing A to doing B, but they've not done B and C. So the writer, the person who reads it will not understand how did they suddenly land up over here. So that's something which I need to be very careful when I'm, reading and redoing the manuscript again when I'm writing it. Sometimes even after my second draft, I kind of miss out. Sometimes I need to do a third draft, fourth draft to finally get it into, that complete clarity of that. And I like to not go to the screen till I do that, till I have that complete coherence and a proper manuscript, which is why sometimes I write my entire book by hand, my first draft. But then sometimes even my second draft, third draft also, especially with Sleeping Dogs, ended up becoming by hand before I finally moved to the screen. So once I move to the screen, it's more to tweak, change little here and there, not to rewrite as such. So I try not to do that, that complete rewriting or replotting of it. I try to avoid. I think better on paper. So that's one of the things for me which I need to be very careful about of underwriting, and then trying to be careful that the reader also has understood what I want to say. And second thing which I kind of try to do in my second draft, like I said, is make sure that there is a logical flow to the story. That, in other words, plot it, outline it and plot it, and make sure that it flows in the way it's supposed to flow. Yeah. And I think the whole, like just what we discussed, the whole thing of pantser and plotter and everything, you can be a pantser, but there is some point of time when you need to plot. So if you're able to plot and then write, it's like, I would say it's a superpower for you. It's great. I'm not proud of that I'm a pantser or something like that, that I feel it's something which kind of slows me down, but it is my process. It's how I write. So that's okay. And I'm just like, I just accepted it now. It's like, it's okay. This is how it's going to be. I'm going to be writing a very messy first draft, and then I have to do it. So of course, so having that logical flow is very important when you go to your second draft, especially if you have not had an outline in your when you were writing your first draft. And so those are my two biggest challenges. Usually the quality of the character, like maybe the gender, hair color, these things might change. Sorry, just 1 second. I forgot to turn on my laptop. So it just showed me that the power is, it's losing battery. I turned it on. Yeah. So things like hair color, gender, all these might change. But what I want my character's basic quality to be like, are they honest? Do they speak the truth? Are they a person who is bold, or is this a person who's scared of things, so those kind of things are not going to change. Those things are, will stay. So I need to make sure that I have, so I know that I am very consistent with the quality of my character, but I need to be careful that all those other characteristics which I change, suddenly someone has a long hair, they should not end up having short hair later on in the story. So those are things like I was just telling Choi, which I try to keep note of, and I hopefully don't have an issue with those kind of things. And does it happen that write your first draft and then decide to drop it altogether? So that's what happened with the first three manuscripts which I wrote. I wrote them with a lot of fun and I enjoyed writing them. I finished the first draft and then I never ended up doing anything else with them, So in between, suddenly one of them, I thought, why don't I work on it again? Because that was like a complete story and I liked it and all that. So I thought I'm just going to start working on it and rewrite it and all that. And then I had to go on a big search around the house to find it. And finally I found it. Then I thought, okay, forget it. Maybe it is not the time for it. Or maybe, it was just a practice of writing at that time. I don't think it's really working or something. And I left it altogether. So it happens. I think there's a lot of first drafts which keep running around me. There's even with short stories and poetries, there's a lot of stuff which I write and they are half written. Sometimes I've written the first draft, then I feel no, it doesn't work, or I feel like it doesn't work. I feel like maybe it's not the time for it, and I just let it go. So it does happen, yes. Thank you, Neha, for the question.
Um, yeah, you have anything?
No. I was just asking for more questions if anybody else has any questions. Do we have any other questions for Archana? I guess that's it. Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this session. It was so enlightening and so informative on so many different levels.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Pratyusha and Joy. And this has been a real pleasure.
For us as well. It's always a pleasure to, sit down and talk to an author
I know.
about writing process. I feel like every discussion just adds, something to our process as well.
Right.
We just get that, some dose of motivation to keep going.
Very true, very true. And especially, for me personally, I feel after writing a book, after writing these books, and then there's this kind of this inborn expectation that I have to write well, whatever I write next. So then I know my first draft is going to be bad. So sometimes I don't allow myself to write that bad first draft because I'm like, no, this is not right. This is not sounding good. It's like, no, it doesn't work. So being published also comes with its own set of challenges, I feel, there's some kind of expectation and pressure we put on ourselves, despite knowing like this is how you are, this is how you do write a messy first draft. So I have to keep telling myself that. So thank you so much. Coming here kind of reminded me of that.
I'm so glad. Okay, so I think we will stop the recording now.
Yeah.